Well, hi again, folks. I'm Greg Flynn, the Public Information Director here for the City of Pearl, and we are going to go under the dome to the big dome this week as we are honored to have our Congressman Michael Guest here with us, fresh in from Washington, D.C. He's doing work in the district, and boy, this is going to be exciting because there's been a lot going on in Washington, D.C. Welcome in.
Greg, good to see you. Good to be home for the week.
Isn't it nice to be
No
back
doubt,
in Mississippi?
no place like home.
Well, to say that it has been eventful for you since this congressional session would be an understatement, isn't it?
No doubt. From the very beginning of this Congress, as we went to Washington on the 3rd of January, began that 15 rounds of speaker votes, like a 15-round heavyweight boxing match that played out over 4 days.
Yeah.
And to be able to get that behind us, I think ultimately was something that is going to unite us as a party. I know that very early on it looked like that we were going to have trouble coalescing behind McCarthy or anyone else, but ultimately McCarthy was able to reach out to members on the conservative side. There were agreements made that I think are going to make us stronger as a party going forward, and I think that McCarthy is going to do a good job leading Congress over the next 2 years.
So some of the Republican protesters that were very public in their opposition, is it a little different behind the scenes? Are they like on board now and just?
Very much so. What looked like a very chaotic situation, and it was at times during that 4 days, I think really have served to unify the Republican Party, particularly the Republican House members. There were concessions made as it relates to spending, and that's something that I think that is going to benefit really the entire country. I mean, we are currently spending at a rate that we will never be able to repay. Was in a meeting a couple weeks back, and the Congressional Budget Office was just giving a general overall briefing, and it said that at the current rate of spending, with programs which are automatically increased every year, with the increase in interest rates, which affects the servicing of the national debt, that we're on pace without any new spending programs to spend $1 trillion a year more every year than we're bringing in. And so we've got to find a way to get spending under control, to bring those spending levels down without touching Social Security and Medicare. Republicans have already said, look, those are not programs that we think need any spending cuts. But as far as the rest of the programs within the federal government, I've got to believe that there are ways, that there are programs out there where we can either reduce spending or maybe reduce programs as a whole. I think Ronald Reagan said the closest thing to eternity is a federal program. Programs that were stood up for a reason. That reason has since expired. It's time for us to review those programs and see where we can find a way to tighten our belt, bring that spending curve down so we're not continuing to add to the national debt, and we're not going to make sure that our children have this extraordinary amount of debt that they're forced to pay during their lifetime.
Well, certainly all Americans and Mississippians are feeling the economic crunch right now. Now one of the things that's being bantered about is that we could be looking at a 2007 type recession coming, with the way interest rates are, with the way home prices are, that a crash is going to happen. I certainly know that Congress knows that's all the talk. Is there a way to ward that off, or are we going to just be going through some pain for the next couple of years?
I think the quickest way to ward that off is two things. One is to bring spending down so that we're not continuing with government spending to add to the increase of inflation. Saw inflation figures came out, and inflation ticked up 6.4%, the current inflation rate, down from 9 plus almost, I guess, about 6 months ago, but still well above the 2% average, which is what we would like to see. You would like to see inflation hover somewhere around 2%, and we're well over 3 times that. And the other thing I think that would help bring those costs down and bring inflation down and hopefully stave off any sort of recession is American production of energy. America has the ability to produce the energy that we need so that we're not dependent upon other countries. We were energy independent under President Trump. We can be energy independent again. And we know that energy costs are a huge part of the budget of everyday Americans, whether they're paying to put gas in their car, whether they're paying their natural gas bill to heat their home in the winter. We know that those costs also affect transportation costs, so the goods that we're purchasing at the grocery store or at the hardware store, there at the Walmart and Pearl, those costs are going to be inflated if it's costing more to transport those goods from point A to point B. So I think that those are two things that Congress can work on, that we can begin to get to work on immediately, that would help drive down those inflationary costs and hopefully stave off a recession.
So is it premature to say that we're destined for a recession? Is that premature?
I've not seen anything, not heard anything to say that, that a recession is inevitable. It is on the horizon if we as a country don't begin to make changes. I think one of the things that we've seen with the Federal Reserve is they're trying to gradually raise interest rates again to bring costs down and hopefully stave off a recession. So I don't believe it is inevitable, but I do believe that we need to be looking ahead, and we can't continue to do business as usual as we have over the last 2 years. If we don't make changes, and if we don't make changes soon, I believe without those changes in place, it would be more likely than not that we would see some sort of recession. How long that recession lasts, how deep that recession is, kind of remains to be seen.
Well, I know we used to talk about sticker shock on big ticket items, cars, boats,
eggs,
homes. Now we're talking about sticker shock. I mean, I know I've seen so many of the memes and the jokes about eggs, but it is really ridiculous. You go there and you can't get a dozen eggs for less than $4, right?
Yeah, anytime you go to the grocery store, my wife sends me to the grocery store generally to just get a handful of items, 6, 8, 10, 12 tops. I used to be able to walk out of the grocery store somewhere around $40 to $50, again, because we weren't doing big grocery shopping for the entire family for the week. Now I'm walking out of there spending $60 and $70 for the same the same items, the same number of items, the same type of items that I've purchased before, and so every family is feeling that, and so and that's why I think we've seen some of the statistics or some of the studies have shown that real wages have actually gone down, and they've gone down because while people's paycheck may be more, the costs that they're paying for their everyday goods and services have outpace the increase in any sort of wage growth, and it's in fact affecting everyone, but I think particularly affecting hardworking Mississippians.
Oh, for sure. I mean, hopefully we can get a handle on that, and things will start to, much like gas prices were way up and then came back to a manageable level. Hopefully we can get eggs back to that manageable.
Well, and you talk about gas prices. I mean, even though gas prices are down, I mean, they're still up right at $1 a gallon on average more than they were 2 years ago. And so, yes, people feel relief at the pump, because they spiked up, at times over $4 a gallon, and now they're back to roughly $3 a gallon. You might can find a little cheaper depending on where you shop, but it's still almost $1 a gallon more. And so people need to remember that. So when they look at that and they feel that relief, they also need to have more of a long-term view and say we're still paying more under this president and this administration than we were when a Republican was in the White House.
Well, one of the things that's exciting to see for you is that with Republican majority now in the House of Representatives, that you've gotten some pretty big committee assignments now. Just a couple of them. You're the chairman of the Committee on Ethics. You are on the House Appropriations Committee. You are the vice chair of the Committee on Homeland Security. Those are some really big shoes that you are filling up there.
Was very blessed to get some great committee assignments. Really looking forward to serving on all those committees. When you think about appropriations, that's a new committee for us, but it's a committee that's very important for Mississippi. Mississippi has had one of our congressmen on the Appropriations Committee going back to the 1940s. And so prior to me, Stephen Palazzo was on Appropriations. Prior to Palazzo, Alan Nunley. Before him, Roger Wicker when he was in the House. And then Jamie Whitten served on House Appropriations for, from the 1940s until he retired, actually rising to chairman of the House Appropriations. We know on the Senate side, we've got Senator Cindy Hyde Smith. And and so that is an important committee as it looks at the funding of the federal government and certain programs that will be funded. So we're excited to serve there. Also excited to return to Homeland Security as the the vice chairman now, was vice ranking member, now vice chairman. Next week we'll be leading a group of a dozen Republicans to the border. We're going to El Paso, going to spend 3 days down on the southern border next week. It's important for our new members to get to see firsthand the crisis along the southern border. And so for many of our new members, they've never been to the border, or maybe they've only been once several years ago. It's important for them to see it firsthand before we start having hearings once we return back to Washington later this month. And so excited to be able to lead that. And then you also mentioned ethics, and so that was a committee that I'm excited to have the opportunity to serve as chairman of that committee. And we've got some big things ahead on that committee. So I'm going to be busy, but hopefully I'm going to be very effective on behalf of the people of Mississippi while I'm serving in Congress.
Well, you talk about Homeland Security, and now that you move up to be the vice chair, now that you're in the majority, all the talk of late is the China and the balloons that have been flying over the United States, other countries. What can you tell us about that you've been able to ascertain to this point?
It's troubling the fact that, over an 8-day period that there have been 4 different objects that have been shot down by the United States military, all either in our space, in our airspace, or one actually over Canadian airspace. We know for sure that the original object that was shot down was Chinese, that they were using that to gather surveillance. And some of the debris has been recovered and is being analyzed now. The other 3 objects, there are recovery efforts underway. Once the debris of those items have been recovered, they will be analyzed, and it will give us a better idea of one, where those objects originated from. Are they Chinese? Are they Russian? Are they North Korean? Are there some other country that is using those types of items? And will also tell us, how sophisticated those types of balloons were, and being able to gather intelligence, either communication, intercepting communication, or intelligence gathering. And so this is something that I think that we have now become very aware of. I think it is very troubling to see the number of incursions over a short period of time, and it's something that must be addressed, I think, by this president and this administration.
One of the things that just came into mind is we've got all this satellite technology, and there's so many satellites up there, that what would be the advantage of other than for the public to be able to see it and to be a show, for a balloon to fly over the United States to gather intelligence?
Well, a couple things. One is, they're going to be hovering over the target for a much longer period of time, and so they can gather some more in-depth intel than a satellite passing by at a much higher orbit. And also the communication intercept. And so if they're trying to intercept communications over key military facilities, they're going to be able to do that from a much lower altitude. And so I think as we begin, as we make the recovery process, as we begin to really analyze the instrumentality that's going to be used, I think we're going to have, the military is going to have a much better picture to see, are these really effective ways that they can gather intelligence, or are these just kind of rude attempts to float something over and hoping to gather something and really offers no real intelligence benefit. And so that's something that we're going to see. But again, just the sheer number, I think, should be troubling to all Americans. And the fact that we know that China has been doing this, we see now that there are reports that this has now been going on for years. We've just now been able to make to have the ability to identify these objects, and we know that these objects aren't just floating over North America, they're not just floating over the United States, that the Chinese are doing this across the globe. And it goes back to what I think is slowly developing into a Cold War with the United States and China.
Well, when we talk Homeland Security, and whether it be the border, whether it be our airspace, you would hope that would be something that's bipartisan, that it's about being Americans and protecting the homeland. I know that there are still some questions that you all are going to want answered, I think, about how much time it took for that balloon to be taken down, as it was over Montana and then not until it got over the North Carolina coast did they shoot it down, and it fell down into the ocean. But I know you guys have questions that you're going to be looking into about that.
That's right. Many people, including myself, feel like that the balloon should have been neutralized immediately. As soon as it was discovered in American airspace, we should have shot the balloon down. Again, this is my opinion, particularly over remote areas such as Montana, where it would be very unlikely to cause damage to anyone on the ground. Because at that point, we know that we would have neutralized it, and to allow it to continue to gather intelligence over the next several days as it crossed over some key military facilities, I think, in my opinion, was irresponsible. But I am glad to see now that this administration seems to be more aggressive, that once these items are identified, that they're taking the action necessary. So maybe that we've seen what has happened in the past. Maybe this administration has learned its lesson. And as these types of objects are even approaching our airspace, I think it's important that we take the immediate step to neutralize it.
Well, one of the things that, the House is controlled by the Republicans, the Senate's still by the Democrats, and the White House is still the Democrats. So it's hard to say that a lot's going to get accomplished, but at least Congress will no longer be a rubber stamp for a while, because you have one chamber controlled by one party and one controlled by the other.
That's right. The House will serve as a check and balance on this administration. For the first 2 years of this administration, they had a Democrat-controlled House, a Democrat-controlled Senate, even though it was equally divided because of the Vice President serving as a tie-breaking vote, and of course a Democrat, Joe Biden, in the White House. And so they were able to push through legislation, in some cases using the reconciliation process without any Republican votes. We also saw that there were no real true investigations being conducted as it relates to things going on in the White House. So with Republicans in control of the People's House, the Republicans controlling the House chamber, we're going to see that it's going to force this administration to work with Republicans, hopefully to work to cut spending and to strengthen our military and secure our border. And we're also going to be able to conduct what we believe are investigations on important topics as it relates to things that are happening within this administration. Again, the border being one of those key issues. I think it's important that we get answers from this administration on why they've been unwilling or unable to secure the southwest border. We've seen record number of immigrants from when President Trump was in office his last month. There were roughly 73,000 immigrants which crossed the border. The month before last, there were over 250,000.
Wow.
And so a huge increase. Over 4.5 million immigrants have entered the country illegally under this president. And so those are questions that we need to have answered. Those weren't the investigations that were being conducted when the Democrats were in control of the House, but now with Republicans in control of the House, we're going to be much more aggressive on oversight.
Well, I know you've got some great committees, and you've talked a lot about, the southern border is going to be a major priority. What are you looking forward to this session? Is there anything in particular, an issue or, something that you hope gets tackled and taken care of over the next year in this session?
One of the things, and again, it's a priority of House Republicans, is trying to find a way to stop, to reverse that spending curve. To try to find a way to get spending under control. Congress has not done a very good job of that, particularly over the last 2 years, but even over the last 4 to 6 years. We've continued to increase spending, and we've continued to raise our national debt. And so I think it's important that we look at ways in which we can slow growth in programs, cut growth, but also making sure that we're funding important projects such as infrastructure projects. I know that that is important as I travel throughout the district. Later I'll be meeting with Mayor Jake in just a few minutes. We're going to be talking about infrastructure projects, talking about roads and bridges and water and sewage projects that are important in every community. And so I think it's important that as Republicans we look and we try to refocus some of our spending into those key infrastructure projects, and also that maybe we turn away from some of the green energy type of things that we saw when the Democrats controlled both chambers. The amount of money that we're going to be spending as a federal government to build out electric charging stations across the United States for the small number of electric vehicles that exist is just astronomical. We could put that money back into roads and bridges, which all vehicles use, and not just electric vehicles. I think that we can look at hopefully refocusing some of the efforts of this government as it relates to spending, and make sure that we are putting more money back into our local communities, because I believe that as tax dollars are being spent, that those tax dollars are better spent and better managed locally than they are from the federal government level.
One more topic before you go, because it's been a hot item here at the state legislature over at the state capitol, and that is our capital city and all of the wrangling that's going on for authority over water and sewer. And the federal government made a huge investment, promising $600 million to Jackson to help fix their water system, but you, much like the state legislature, want to make sure that there's oversight over that, correct?
That's right, and there must be accountability. You can't just write a blank check for $600 million to any agency, whether that be the city of Jackson or the state, and say, all right, here's the money, you spend it how you want to. So there has to be accountability for any tax dollars that are allocated by the federal government. And I think that's important. And it should be important not just to those of us in the federal government, but it should be important to the people of Jackson. If the citizens of Jackson are getting $600 million from the federal government, they should want to know that all $600 million are being spent in the right place and being spent efficiently. They don't want to lose 10% or 20% of that money by the fact that money is not being spent either in the right place or in the right manner. And so I'm a firm believer in accountability. I'm a firm believer that, as Jackson is getting federal dollars, as they're getting state dollars, that there must be an accountability that money is being spent how the taxpayers intended it to be. I also, as a former prosecutor, I am a big supporter of expanding the jurisdictional footprint of Capitol Police. I think that they have done a phenomenal job under a short period of time. With Chief Lucky in charge, we've seen that they have been very aggressive in enforcement in the downtown Jackson area. Mm-hmm. You now have businesses who at one time were thinking of leaving downtown Jackson who are looking at staying, businesses who are even thinking about moving into downtown Jackson because now they feel safer with Capitol Police there. That should make the citizens of Jackson extremely happy. Because the last thing they want is to see a hollow downtown area where there's no businesses. The only businesses there are the only people there are government buildings and churches. They should want the private sector there. And so I think this is a very important move. I applaud the legislature for doing that. I think it's going to improve public safety in the city of Jackson. And as we know, that the city of Pearl benefits from that. A safer Jackson equates to a safer Pearl and a safer Brandon. You can't separate the two and say, well, we're not concerned about Jackson. Jackson crime affects Pearl. We know that. And so anything that is going on that is impacting the crime rate in Jackson and bringing that down is going to make the citizens of Rankin County, particularly the citizens of Pearl, safer.
Well, not only that, as you mentioned, the way Jackson goes, not only when people visit there, but if businesses open down there, more than likely, a lot of those folks will come live in Rankin County and work over in Jackson. So the more flourishing that Jackson becomes, the better it is for us in selling homes and collecting taxes on restaurants and all those other things.
That's right. There's no doubt. Most of the people who work in downtown Jackson, many of those people live in Rankin or Madison County. Mm-hmm. They are commuting, and so when there are new businesses opening in Jackson, then that creates new opportunities for people in our community. When they're bringing people in from other states, those people are going to be looking at the surrounding area as to where they want to call home. And so you're right. A flourishing, prosperous capital city is going to benefit the entire metro area, and we can't forget that. And we must remember that anything that the legislature does that helps Jackson prosper is actually going to help the entire area.
What is the best way for folks to reach out to you if they have concerns or ideas in the district? What's the best way they can
we've been blessed in that we've got offices throughout the district, but our main office is in Rankin County on Highway 80, right down from the courthouse. You can go online, you can Google us and get information as to the address, phone number. There's also a way that you can reach out to us electronically. And I do encourage anyone who watches this that may have some sort of issue that they're going through with the federal government, please reach out to us. We have some incredible people who do constituent service work, and so maybe you're a veteran and you're having an issue with the VA that you're not able to see that resolved successfully. Reach out to us. Sometimes as people are seeking IRS refunds and those refunds drag on and on and on, we're able to intervene and make sure that those refunds, that the return is being properly and quickly processed and that those returns are back out the door. If you're getting ready to travel and you're having trouble getting a passport, those are all things that our office is able to help people in the district, and I'm very proud of the work that we do. So encourage your listeners and those that are watching this show, please contact us if there's an issue with the federal government that they're unable to resolve. Let us see if we can get involved. We've been able to help successfully resolve about 80% of those complaints that come into our office. So we're not able to get everyone resolved as we would like, but we're shooting at roughly 80%, so I'm extremely proud of what we've been able to do.
Well, and with spring break coming up, summer vacations, hey, if you're going to be in D.C. At any time, make sure you stop by the office and visit with the folks, right?
And reach out to us. We can set up Capitol tours. We can set up things White House tours, things of that. So anyone that is traveling to D.C., encourage them to reach out to our office ahead of time. The Capitol is now back open, so anyone can enter the Capitol. You don't have to have an appointment, and so we would encourage you to stop by 450 Cannon, which is our office. Come by and see us, but reach out to us before you come. Let us see if we can set up tours of the Capitol, White House, some of the other things out there, so that you'll have a great experience when you visit your nation's capital.
Now, the tours at the Capitol, I do know those are easier to come by on a daily basis. White House, is there still like a several week?
There is. First of all, anybody who wants to tour the White House, there's a background check that has to be conducted for anybody who wants to tour. So the quicker that you can get that information to our office, the better. And I will say that my predecessor, Greg Harper, who was here from Pearl, used to give individual Capitol tours, and I still think his tours are probably the best of any out there.
Fantastic, yes.
I've been there now 4 years, and my tours can't hold a candle to what Greg was able to do. So he was an incredible historian. He had, just as he was delivering those tours to people, he was able to point out some pretty incredible things in the Capitol. So if you get a chance to catch Greg when he's back in D.C., I'm sure he'll also be able to continue to give those tours, but I wanted to give a shout out to Congressman Harper.
Absolutely, and I want to point one more thing out before he goes. The headquarters may be in downtown Brandon, but he's wearing a pearl tie.
That's right, pirate tie.
They're rocking the pirate tie. We just need you to wear that on a big
big vote,
on a big speech on the floor, or at a big Homeland Security hearing.
There we go.
We need you to rock the pearl for that.
Yeah, take it down the border with me.
Very good. Well, Congressman, thank you so much for coming in. Super stuff you're doing up there.
Appreciate you continuing to have me on, and look forward to continue to update you on what we're doing in Washington, D.C.
All right. That is Under the Dome at the U.S. Capitol. We encourage you to visit Representative Guest on his website, on all of his social media. He does a great job of updating on social media, especially on his Facebook page. As soon as something happens, he's got it right up there. We thank you for tuning in. That is Under the Dome, U.S. Capitol Edition. I'm Greg Flynn. We will talk to you again soon.